regulatory approvals for RF devices. So today we will be going over the requirements of radio frequency and safety approvals in Mexico. In this webinar, we will provide an overview of the major topics necessary to understand to get your devices on the right track for authorization and distribution in Mexico. If you have any questions on the topics presented today, or any other immediate questions regarding compliance testing and product certifications, you can reach us at info@vista-compliance.com. Let's begin the presentation. So starting with a brief overview, what is NOM? NOMs are Mexican technical standards which regulate and assure the values, quantities, design characteristics, production, or service of goods imported and sold in the country. There are different NOM scopes of application for the approvals process, issuing certificates of conformity for radio products that are subject to local testing prior to IFT review. Most electrical products operating over 24 volts AC/DC require compliance with NOM safety standards. NOM has two main approval procedures for type approval. The two ways to obtain approval are paperwork documentation evaluation only or local testing and documentation evaluation. It is important to note that operating frequencies of the device will determine which approval method you will take. Now let's briefly take a look at an overview of the approval process. The first process is documentation technical review, which is paperwork only, no testing is required. This process is how the IFT ensures that RF and telecom devices used in Mexico operate effectively without causing harmful interference and otherwise comply with the regulations. When starting a new application, we have to first determine the relevant requirements and find out what is applicable. We know that operating frequency of the device will determine which scheme of approval you will have to go through. For this paperwork-only process, any device operating solely on frequencies not governed by either NOM-208-SCFI-2016 or IFT-011-2017 Part 2 will be permitted. Once we have determined we can follow this approval process, we will submit the necessary documents to the IFT-authorized external reviewer. They are independent entities authorized to carry out reviews in Mexico. If all documentation is in order, the next step is for the reviewer to issue documentation, technical details confirming the function and operation of equipment. This documentation will be issued to the IFT to conduct a full review. Once this review is completed, an approval certificate can be issued by the IFT. Now let's take a look at the second approval process. This one involves both testing and documentation review. Testing is required for equipment operating on NOM 208-SCFI-2016 in the 902 to 928 MHz, 2400 to 2483.5 MHz, and 5725 to 5850 MHz ranges. It also requires IFT-011-2017 Part 2. For cellular frequencies. These types of products are usually Bluetooth or Wi-Fi 2.4 or 5 GHz. After determining that we must take this route instead, we will send in a sample for testing. Then, the test reports will be reviewed by NICE. If the product is confirmed compliant in line with conformity assessment criteria, NICE will issue a certificate of conformity. IFT will review all documents, and if everything is in compliance with the regulations, they will issue the approval certificate. Now looking at some specifics for radio frequency approvals. When going the documentation only route, no samples are required to be submitted. You also do not need to include a user guide in the Spanish language for this process. An English user guide will be fine, and a local certificate holder is required for both approval processes. For the testing and documentation process, you must submit samples. For a non-cellular device, one is one as sold sample is required to support the approval application. You must include full support equipment and test instructions. For a cellular device, you must submit one as sold device and one modified sample. A user guide in the Spanish language must accompany the sample, and as I said earlier, a local certificate holder is required for both approval processes. Radio frequency and telecom family approvals are approved on case-by-case situations. Frequency bands, brands, software, and processing type will be evaluated to determine if there can be a family approval for a product. The only way to create a family is on end devices. Modular approvals are permitted, but may not always be sufficient enough to cover the host as well. Any product that is subject to NOM safety approval will have to go through local testing. You must submit one as sold sample when applying for safety approval. The safety scheme in Mexico is usually governed by NICE. Some of the key type approval standards we will commonly see is NOM-001 for electronic products such as freezers, motor-operated tools, and electronics. NOM-003 is for the electrical products such as wiring devices and circuit breakers. NOM-019 is for data processing equipment, and NOM-208 is used to certify wireless technologies such as telecommunications products. There is an updated version of NOM-001 that will go into effect on August 14. To learn more about the update, you can go into vista-compliance.com under the News section. Family approvals depend on which NOM legislation your device applies to. For example, a device subject to NOM-001 may have 8 models, whereas for devices applying to NOM-019, you may have up to 14 models fall under the family approval. In order to meet the requirements, the products must be the same brand and have the same product description and technical data. Some examples that meet this requirement can come from the voltage source, frequencies, or power consumption. So, what devices actually require NOM safety approval? Any product that has an electrical power source requires NOM safety, include AC-DC adapters or a PoE, such as a tablet with AC-DC adapter. It is important to note that devices such as power supplies and PoE injectors require separate NOM safety approval if imported or sold as a standalone device. If they are sold with a host device, then only one approval, the host plus the PSU, can be obtained. Most electrical products operating over 24 volts AC-DC require compliance with NOM safety standards. You can apply for NOM safety approval along with IFT radio frequency approval, or you can just apply for NOM safety approval. The two ways you can avoid gaining NOM safety approval for your device is if the device is a module or a lithium battery, or if there is a UL equivalency, but this is only under certain cases. Every electrical and electronic product traded, made, assembled, imported, and or used in Mexico is required to comply with the technical regulation based on prevailing laws and legislation. Here is a list of some of the regulated products that are subject to NOM and IFT. Now we will take a look at the technical requirements used to show compliance with Mexico's rules and regulations. IFT covers mostly radio frequency regulations, while NOM covers the safety of products. When applying for type approval, we should be aware of what technical requirements are applicable and appropriate for the device seeking certification. IFT regulates all radio approvals in Mexico. Here are some of the latest radio frequency regulations under IFT approval. The NOM mark is a mandatory safety mark for regulated products. Here are some common safety standards in Mexico under NOM regulation. Let's talk a little bit more about NOM safety standards, specifically NOM-024. All electric or electronic products that will be imported into Mexico and will be sold to the general public in retail stores must comply with NOM-024 to be imported. This does not mean that the products must get the document from NISE that states that the product complies with this NOM, but the product does not need to comply. If you do choose to get the certification document from NISE, it will take about 2 to 3 weeks. 2.4 regulates information included on the package, warranty, and manual of device. Information of the importer distributor must appear in a label on the package. Validation of this NOM is permanent and under the name of the distributor. It is not transferable. To be granted approval, a product must comply with the following requirements. The box or package must show the right information about the product inside. The product must have a label attached to the box or package, which must be in Spanish, to tell the customer what product is inside the box. It must include the trademark, model name, where it was manufactured, who imported it to Mexico, the contents of the box, and the electrical specifications of the product. The warranty statement must be in Spanish and must tell clearly what it covers in case the product does not work well, and where the user should call or go to get support on the product. And the user manual must be in Spanish and must be clear and understandable. This is a list of requirements usually required for IFT approval, but some devices may require additional documentation or samples. The time it takes to gain approval depends on the approval process and whether or not testing is applicable. The longest lead time for radio frequency and telecommunication approval is 10 to 12 weeks. Here are the requirements for obtaining a NOM safety certification. It is important to remember that all products entering the country must comply with the standard named by the Harmonized System HS code to be imported into Mexico. The lead time for this certification may take up to 4 weeks or longer, depending on the time of year. For example, you may experience some delays the closer it gets to the holiday season in December. Certification validity depends on the device and which approval method was taken. For devices approved via paperwork only or devices operating on NOM 028 SCFI-2016 or IFT-011-2017 Part 2 plus another frequency band, the certificate is valid for 1 year. After the first year is almost up, you may renew the certificate and then it will be valid indefinitely. It is important to know that any renewal application must be filed to IFT before the initial approval certificate expires. If the renewal application is filed after the existing certificate expires, you will need to submit a full reapproval and do everything all over again from the start. Any device operating only on NOM-028-SCFI-2016 or IFT-011-2017 Part 2, the initial certificate is valid indefinitely. There is no need to ever renew the certificate. For devices that were initially approved via local testing, the renewal process will follow the documentation technical review process. Any NOM safety approval certificate is only valid for 1 year. Renewals for NOM safety approval are also only valid for 1 year. It is important to note that the NOM certificate holder is responsible for warranty, maintenance, and product liability. NOM certificates are non-transferable. However, a manufacturer that is a NOM holder may extend usage rights of its NOM certification to Mexican distributors, who may then obtain their own NOM certification without additional testing. The NOM NISE logo is mandatory to be placed on the product for any electrical or electronic device subject to local testing in Mexico. If a device does not require testing, it does not need the NOM logo. All devices approved by IFT must have the IFT equipment identifier. That is on the type approval certificate. If it has multiple N devices, we can group them, but only if it's the same device, same brand, and same internal radios or circuitry. If it is a host product containing approved modules, it must have the statement, "This product contains an approved module model number XXX, IFT number XXXX." The label on the device must show the NOM logo, electrical specs, country of origin, and model number. There is no required size or format for the labeling information as long as it is legible and contains all of the required information, such as manufacturer's name, importer's name, description of its components, and if applicable, a risk warning. Here are examples of the certificates for both NOM and IFT. The certificate on the left is for NOM, approved by NICE. It includes product specification, certificate number, the certificate holder's name, address, contact information, countries of origin, and certification date and validity. It also includes what NOM standards have been approved for the product. The certificate on the right is for an IFT approval. This certificate includes product specification, the certificate holder's name, address, contact information, IFT standards this product was approved for, and the certification date.